Wow, it's Saturday, November 2nd. The year's going by so fast. And it's, what is it, 9:30 in the morning. Yeah, daylight savings time is tonight or Sunday night, whatever, this weekend. I had to spend last week in Fort Myers for work, so I didn't get anything done on this, except thinking about it. So today's the day, man. We're gonna stick this thing in there for its first fit, and hopefully that's gonna go well. It's a little nerve-wracking because once you start drilling holes for the hinges, if you're off the 1/16 of an inch, you're kind of screwed, right? Because what do you do with the 16th? You gotta plug the hole. And there's my wife.
With your teeth.
Looking so beautiful. Thank you.
Right here?
Yep.
You changed my tag?
I changed your license tag and I put the new paperwork in the glove box.
Thank you.
And took out the old paperwork.
Thank you. Oh, we need to move your car to my room Friday.
Yes, we do.
I can do that.
Bye. Daughter number 1 is coming home. My number 1 daughter. My only daughter. It's going to be a nice visit. Alright, so here's what I'm planning on doing. I got to locate the center of that hole, one of these holes. They all line up, right? I mean, really, we only have... I mean, this is going to be perfect by my standards because I only have an 1/8 of an inch gap to the top. So if I'm off by a 1/16 of an inch, I'm going to be missing my target gap by a 1/16 of an inch, which that's half, right? So yeah, it's going to be a little precarious here on doing this. So I think what I want to do is use hinge 2, since that's one of these critical hinges, and get a measurement from one of these screws to the very top, and then give myself an 1/8 of an inch gap, and I'll know the height of where the screw goes in the door jamb, that is. And then I just got to figure out the depth, which should be pretty simple because we've got these little flats here on the hinge as a gauge. Where'd you go? There you go. So we're going to use those flats to get us in line. This one here is not exactly where I want it, but I guess it is. So let's see how that goes. Alright, so 29 1/4 is just a little bit shy of the center of that screw. Alright, I'm going to go with that because I'd rather the door be a hair too high than a hair too low. Because too high, I can always trim the wood piece. Too low, there's nothing I can do except trim the bottom of the door. When I say trim the wood piece, it's the door jamb header piece. So 29 1/4 with an 1/8 of an inch gap puts me at 29 3/8 from the top of the jamb where I need to mark the jamb height. And I'm going to do that with not a... need something sharp, right? Because I want a very precise... I could use a scribe or a very sharp pencil if I had one. I'm still going to need the scribe here to set my drill. Alright, so let me just use a scribe, I guess. And I'm going to need a square. Where's my square at? I can use this little guy. This was my dad's. So anytime I say something was my dad's, hey, I'm already retirement age. So we're talking a generation old. That's how old this stuff is. Okay. Kind of seems like they just don't make tools like they used to. Some things, anyway. All right, so now we're gonna have to measure 29 3/8 in the top. All right, and we're gonna put a scribe mark to the height that we need. And then we'll do a measurement from the edge in, and that should be it. And we're gonna drill one hole. And we're going to put the screw in the hole and then back it out again, so we know that we have a nice easy job of threading the screw in. So what I've got here, it looks like 3/4 of an inch wood and 3/4 of an inch wood, so it looks like I have 1.5 inches, but I really don't, because this piece right around the middle has a tapered cut that goes to that dark edge in there, which is practically nothing. So by the time I get to where the hinges screws are here, right around here somewhere, we're already getting narrow. So this piece, for starters anyway, is pretty much all that's going to hold my hinges, and that's why I put so many screws in it, so that I know that this is held in place very well. Ultimately, I want to drill clean through here and use machine screws with nuts around back wherever I can, or thread into the steel wherever I can. So we're gonna hope that goes well. So let me start doing some marking, and I'll come back. So I did my thing. I put my tape measure here, and that little dot I poked in there with my awl is 29 3/8 of an inch from the top. So now I need to find out my depth. So what I did, come over here to sit down, I loosened the screw so that the cross would be aligned with the world. All right, so what I need is this measurement, and I kind of can't get there, so I'm going to measure this, something like that, right about there. That's let's call it 1.130. Okay, let me double check. Close enough. 1.130. I'm going to subtract that from 2 inches, and then I'll have the distance from here to there. And then we're going to measure that distance on the door jamb, and we'll be able to drill our first hole. Okay, so there's the math. The aluminum is just a few thousandths of an inch bigger than 2 inches wide. Subtracting my 1.130 is 8.870. All right, so there's your 0.870 set on my caliper, and I've tightened the brake lock, and just a sanity check where we are, right? So now we can come back to the bus. I'll be glad when this is over with. And there's our depth that we need for hole number 1. So I'm going to take my awl, put a little bit of a horizontal line here so I can make it my X, and then come back with this and put another little stick mark, punch mark. And I'm going to come back with a small drill bit, maybe 1/8, and drill a pilot hole, maybe even smaller than 1/8 for the first hole, and then increase my pilot hole to be the right size for the screw. Oh gosh, hole number 1. Okay, so I don't know if you can see the little faint line that I scratched across from that hole out. And I put my caliper here. All right, so like we're within thousandths of an inch, right? So yes, I know I'm anal about how this stuff goes. So it's just a little lesson on dial caliper stuff. Working in decimals way easier than working fractions. Yeah, this thing's out of whack because I dropped it once. And you might want to say, well, I prefer digital, electronic ones. It's easier to do the math when you've got a dial because you can physically see what half of 70 is by it's 20, right? Or whatever, do the math. From 0 to 50 is half of a revolution, or from 7 to 20 is half of a revolution. And whatever the number is, it's much easier to see visually with a dial than it is with a digital. You have to sit there and break out the pencil sometimes, right? The downside to these is they're delicate. If you drop them just right, it rips the gears up and stuff. This one happens to be about 39 years old. So if you take care of it and you get a good one, they'll last. It's only been dropped a few times, and this is the first time it's ever been dropped. It was within a few months ago. I dropped it, and it didn't skip a tooth on the rack. It skipped a tooth inside here. If it skips a tooth on the rack, you can easily recalibrate it. There's a little device you stick up in the hole there, and you can fix that. But when it skips a tooth within here, you're off by less than a quarter of a revolution or less than a half, whatever a tooth is on the rack. But anyway, I digress. You have multiple ways of using this thing. You've got the outside diameter, you've got the inside diameter, and you've got depth here, but you also have depth right here from there to there. So you can just use it like this, and you get right there. Half of a hole is the middle of the hole. All right, so there's your Saturday morning lesson on dial calipers. So now we're going to drill this. I want to make sure I drill really straight. I actually have a jig for this. I don't think it's worth the effort, but maybe it will be for the first hole. Let me see if I can find it. I think I will do it just for fun. Should be in this box. Oh, here it is, right here. So let me set this down. Gosh, I haven't used this thing in a decade. So what it does is it kind of makes a drill press out of a drill. It's rinky-dink, but it works. When I bought this thing, you look at this, it's like, gee, man, that's like cast aluminum. It's pretty cool stuff, right? Nah, it's plastic. Parts of it anyway. Am I wrong? Thought it was plastic. Yeah, it's plastic. I remember that from last time. I was kind of bummed. Bought this thing and it's freaking plastic. But hey, it does what it needs to do. I mean, right? It's got some wiggle to it or whatever, but if you go with a light hand, put your drill bit in this chuck and put your drill in this chuck. This thing needs to be oiled up a little bit. You can come in and drill perpendicular to a surface or set the angles. Right? It's a pretty cool tool. I like it. So we're probably set on 0. Yeah, it looks like we are. It's easy to check. But you can also, it has V's in it, V-ways. So if you want, you can put a round piece in here and you'll be able to drill right in the middle of it. It's cool, right? I like tools. So I think I'll play with this, get that first hole drilled, and see how it goes. Alright, so I got one of the screws that came with the hinges. Measured the shank without the threads, and we're just a hair over 150 thousandths of an inch. So I went and got a number. This is 150 thousandths drill bit, and that's a number 24, which actually will drill 152 thousandths. Drills always cut a little bit bigger than what they measure. So yeah, right, I'm anal retentive, but the point of the matter is you want to drill your hole about the size of the shank of the screw without the threads. So you don't, I mean, you can go a little bit smaller on softer wood so you can get, you know, things to be a little tighter, but I'm going into oak, and that's the size drill I used when I drilled the holes in here, and it was perfect. So we're going to use this for our finish hole. I'm going to use this for my first pilot hole just to make sure I'm going straight. And I got my little jig all rigged up here. I took some oil, just put oil in the hole, so now everything's like spinning nice and smooth. It's just a bushing, it ain't a bearing. And I also oiled the slides, so this is a little bit slicker. And I got the drill chuck out of there. It was just hand tight. That's the way I like to keep my drill chucks. I just put them in the drill and tighten it by hand. And I set it down somewhere. Here it is. Yeah, I know, I'm a mess. So we're going to chuck up our drill bit in here, put the drill in here, we're going to go ahead and hit it. Okay, we're ready to go. Yeah, it's an odd looking setup, but it really does work well. Let's get over to the bus and do our thing. I'm not going to be able to record while I'm doing the work, but just kind of demo concept here, right? Okay. Okay. Hey, there's nothing precision about that jig, but it's way better than just eyeballing, trying to get a hole to go through something straight. And look at there. We'll be able to put nut on the back of that one. Okay, so here you can see where the bend is in the middle. That seam right, that bend right there. I know it's hard to tell looking at what we got going on here, but at least we know that we're going to get a nut on that one. Now up here on the top hinge, it ain't going to work because we're an inch further in on the bus. See the gap here? So it's maybe 3/4 of an inch further in. So we come over here, 3/4 of an inch in from there is like right in this frickin' spot where you wouldn't want it. But it is what it is, right? All right, take two. I don't know how much I got in the last video here. So I drilled my hole out to the 150 thousandths bit, number 24, I guess it was. Then I measured the depth of the hole, and we have enough wood here between this piece and that piece to accommodate the length of that screw and a little bit more, which is great. So we'll have a good, strong support of the hinge on just the wood alone. On the hinges that I can do, I'm going to put the nut on the back, like I mentioned earlier, but I ran the screw in and out a couple times, so this will be easier to manage. But what I'm going to have to do when I put the door in here, the door is going to have to be open at least 90 degrees out, so I'll have access to be able to put the screw in here, which means my tarp's going to have to go, or at least be thrown over the top or something. And I'm going to have to rig something to hold the door for me while I'm getting this first screw in there. And again, just to kind of reiterate what I'm doing here, I'm putting the hinge right flat on top of this as a test for alignment of the door up and down and in and out with one screw. Once we get the first one in, we'll put in another one down there, and then that'll line up the door to this. And once we're happy with how all that's come out and our alignment is good, we're not hitting up on top or the gap's not too big on the top, using just 2 screws, that'll be the boss for where we're going to finish the job. And to finish the job, I'll be able to remove this piece of wood with using these screws, go in the shop, and then we'll mortise out around each of the hinges and put the rest of the holes, at least in this, so we can drill into this straight on. We can use this piece of wood as a drill guide. I'll be able to do this on the drill press milling machine in there and get nice straight holes. Every, you know, yada yada. So that's the deal. So first order of the day is now opening these windows because it's hot in here. Okay, we're getting ready to do this. Turns out a 5-gallon pail is almost exactly the height of that step. The little woman's out getting her nails done. It sure would be nice to have a second person to help me on this thing. But we're going to do our Boy Scout best here and see if we can get the door over here. Once we get the first screw in it, everything will stabilize.